Counter-Strike V1 was released 20 years ago today, on November the 9th, year 2000. You might be wondering why we celebrated this last year. That's because betas for the game started coming out 17 months prior to official release. So back in June of 2019 we got the old version of Dust 2 to celebrate, then later on in the year received a CS20 weapon case as well. Why Valve chose to celebrate the betas instead of the official release is anybody's guess, but here's hoping we'll get something nice to celebrate today as well. Regardless of what happens, I thought now might be a good time to journey back and to see how the game we all love so much came to be. Here's the timeline. The game went through 7 major betas and several additional minor changes before official launch. But the story of the game begins even earlier. Before Counter-Strike, Min Lee, online nickname Gooseman, had been working on a Navy SEALs type mod for Quake 2. He grew bored of this and passed the gun models that he had made to some Quake 2 developers known as the A-Team. He ended up joining them, and it was through them that he met Jess Cliff. They spoke on IRC, and Lee shared his plans for his own mod. Jess liked the idea, and they'd later work together to make Counter-Strike. The A-Team went on to create Action Quake 2, which became one of the most played Quake 2 mods ever. But by then, Lee had already left the A-Team. He wanted to work on a Navy SEALs 2 mod, but discovered that somebody else had done it already, so instead went off to work on a Half-Life mod. He was already familiar with the game's engine, and felt that Half-Life's realistic setting made it better suited to his mod than Quake's was. In 1999, Min Lee would have been 22, and Jess Cliff would have been 18. Both were born on June the 27th. Development for Counter-Strike started at the very beginning of 1999. I found this early interview from that February, where Min teased some sneak preview shots of his new mod. You guessed it, these are for Counter-Strike, before even the earliest betas had started. And yes, the Gooseman is left-handed. He first wanted to call it Counter-Terrorist Forces, but Jess was all like, nah, that's a bit long. And they settled upon the name Counter-Strike. They mostly got information on the guns from the internet and from gun magazines. At one point, Min had a chance to fire some weapons himself and commented on how awesome the recoil for the Magnum was. He suggested using Jess's house as a mock firing range, but his parents didn't approve. They started teasing the mod in March with pictures and videos, and the hype quickly grew, helped by Min's history of modding for Quake 2. Despite having a history of 3D modelling, he felt that it was one of the most time-consuming and tedious bits of the project. The first beta suffered from many bugs and crashes, and the team had a desperate shortage of maps. Jess worked on the community side of things, encouraging people to develop maps for their mod. At the beginning they were practically begging people, and legend has it that Jess contacted pretty much everybody who had ever submitted a map for Half-Life over on the old mapping site called Radium. Despite these problems, the first beta was released on June the 19th, 1999. Here is the original blog post announcing it. And check out this installation I found for it. I think the first version of Counter-Strike deserves playing. It's not like there's much to see. It sports a grand total of 9 weapons and 4 maps, all of which are hostage, and none of them are in CSGO today. The version I'm showing here must be slightly newer, since there are 6 maps to choose from. But before I could do anything, I needed to change the default controls, which in this earliest version of the game were utterly ridiculous. But even with all of that configured, I couldn't get far with the game. I could figure out how to change teams, but the buy menus didn't seem to work, and I couldn't buy more ammo for my pistol. The right mouse button triggered the burst fire with the Glock, and just fired the CT pistol because there wasn't a suppressor option at the time. Also, check this out. The icon for the CT's pistol still looks like the one shown in those earliest of screenshots. This first version of Counter-Strike is no longer in a playable state. Every bit of it is as rough as you can get, and without bots, it's going to be dead forever. But I'll show you the 4 maps bundled with it. The map Siege you might know because it was remade for CSGO and featured in Operation Bravo, though I didn't recognise it when I loaded it up here. It's so different in appearance. This original beta version sports a car park / bunker / desert theme, kind of like many early maps for the game, which would borrow their assets from Half-Life's Black Mesa levels. The remade Siege for CSGO, released in early 2013, did away with all of this and had a jungle makeover instead. Even this version of the map is coming up to 8 years old now. Isn't it wild how CSGO's been around for so long that even remade maps can feel like ancient history? Back to the beta version again, and it's hard to know how to describe it when compared with the finished game because it's so different. But what stood out to me most was that in this earliest version, it doesn't feature the things that we've all assumed defines what Counter-Strike is. There's no knife, for example. Obviously there's no bot support either, that's something we take for granted these days, but without it, it renders an old version of a game like this well and truly dead. We know that Counter-Strike started off as a mod for Half-Life, but in Beta 1 it's more like it's just Half-Life, but with some new weapon and character models. It's not different enough to be its own thing just yet. But because of that, it's interesting to see all of the weird options available, like being able to toggle on a flashlight, or having the choice between standard or realistic full damage. You can even disable footsteps, which I did at one point, then wondered why I couldn't hear them because I'm stupid like that. These were all basic server options for Half-Life back then, but when a game like Counter-Strike has had such a long legacy, and when so few of us have seen it this early on, it's really odd to see. The next map I played is the catchily named Weapon Depot. Although removed from the game for Beta 2, it feels very familiar to play on, possibly because it's just like Assault, which actually stole some bits of this map. So I guess you could call this the first version of CS Assault. It feels like an arena shooter, and was made by a Quake mapper, so that's no big surprise. It's an open map, with ladders and platforms everywhere. I actually quite like it, but you wouldn't want to play a match of Counter-Strike on it. You can see how horrendous the hostage support was in this earliest version. They'd sprint after you and jam you into a corner, or get stuck behind a closing door. I can't imagine many rounds were won from rescuing these twitching, glitching monsters. I don't know what happened to the map, Mansion. By the time I got into the Counter-Strike series, it was long gone from the game, yet I remember I'd hear people wanting it to return to the series, which is strange because it was only around for Betas 1 and 3 before being removed from the game for good. This map was made by a Team Fortress mapper, and it contained quirky features like working light switches in every room, and security cameras at CT spawn which could be used to observe parts of the level. But Assault later got these features as well, which makes me suspect this was another early map to be borrowed from. And the last of these 4 maps, CS Prison, deserves honourable mention for being voted the worst Counter-Strike map ever, and wasn't even playable for the first release. I gave it a go. It's large, it's sprawling, has a large sewer system that you have to crouch through, a Zen skybox from Half-Life 1's campaign, fireable mounted guns, dead-end areas with no reason, slow to open doors that you have to open to get the hostages through, and at this stage, there was no hostage rescue area. You had to get them back to your buy zone. So if you try playing this map on newer versions of the game, then you'll be unable to rescue them at all. As it was, even in this early working version, I still got lost and couldn't be bothered. CS Beta 1, not quite ready to be released just yet. There's no radar, no knife, there are apparently grenades but I couldn't find them, there aren't any bots, if you lost the round you got no money, dropping a weapon made it completely disappear, round times were over 5 minutes long, there was no buy time, Kevlar was useless, the weapon models were all left-handed because Gooseman was, and this is probably why wannabe pro players used left-handed models for years. This version of the game is not that good, but I'm happy to say that I've tried it. Single player. Knowing what Beta 1 of Counter-Strike was like, I'm happy to move on. Don't bother with it yourself, it's a lot of hassle to get up and running these days, and it's not actually very good. I'm turning my focus to the later betas now with the intention of documenting how Counter-Strike changed and developed on its way towards official release. With hindsight, maybe I should have timed this series that I reached V1.0 on its 20th anniversary. Oh well.